Now, we are into the last full week of the general election campaign, and we've been asking which issues matter most to you as part of our Your Voice, Your Vote series.
We've had loads and loads of messages, and among many responses we've had are concerns about the environment. So our climate editor, Justin Rowlatt, has been to meet one of our viewers who wants to talk about plans for a solar farm near her home.
Welcome to the front line of the UK's battle to go green. It lies amongst the ancient churches and cosy cottages of the Cotswolds, where there are plans for a huge new solar plant. Like all the main political parties except Reform, local resident Kate O'Connor thinks more solar power is a great idea.
We're on this beautiful country track. There's hedges to the left, hedges to the right, and you really can't see it at all unless there's a gap.
The Botley West solar farm would cover 13 square kilometres with 2.5 million solar panels and create enough electricity for more than 1/3 of homes. Kate is frustrated by the stand taken by virtually all the candidates locally.
The challenge is, on the national level, the two big parties that have the best chance in my constituency say brilliant things about reaching net zero on the national level, but when it comes to backing a huge project like this that can actually get us there, they're not interested. They're fighting against it.
You don't have to go far to find out why they take that position.
I think it is ridiculous, because it's all greenfields I've used and not brownfields. And apart from that, the size of it is unbelievably big. It is, well, if you put it together, it'd be a few miles long and a few miles wide, if you would put it all together. And it's all placed so that it will spoil several villages in the area.
Britain is already doing really well. I don't think we can sit on our laurels and say we're doing enough, but it's not that we have to have this solar panel installation around Ensham, otherwise the temperature's going to rise by 10 degrees. It's just not that urgent. It's let's find other ways.
My opinion's quite mixed, because we need the renewable energy if we don't face up to the facts. Where we put them, that's the difficult one, isn't it?
There's nothing exceptional about the Cotswolds. Solar plants, wind farms and the pylons that carry the power they generate to the grid create similar opposition all over the UK. Virtually all the UK's politicians argue we need more renewables, so the challenge for them, and it is a big one, is how to get local people in places like this to agree to host these projects.
Well, Justin joins us now. Morning to you, Justin.
Morning.
So in terms of the postbag for Your Voice, Your Vote, climate issues raised high, very high in there, and people interested in knowing about solar and renewable energy.
This is a huge issue, partly because it's such a big local issue as well as a national issue. So we've got Harrison, who's 17 from Lincolnshire. He's worried about a solar plant near where he lives, Mallard Pass it's called, near Stamford in Lincolnshire. He says loads of people opposed it, but they let it go ahead anyway. He says, why can't people say no to these projects? Then we've got William, who's 28 from Durham. He takes a totally different direction. He says, how will the parties tackle NIMBYism? And that, of course, is when people say, not in my backyard. Totally oppose those two. And then Michael, who's 35 from Warwickshire, says, how can the national grid be improved by making it easier to connect solar plants and storage to the national grid?
So what are the different political parties? What are they saying on renewables? How do their approaches differ?
Well, all of them except Reform are saying they want dramatic reductions in emissions and say that will include a big increase in renewable energy in the UK. Labour is the most bullish on this. Keir Starmer has said he's willing to make enemies on the issue. He was very clear in his Panorama interview about that. He says he wants to reform planning to make it easier to get solar and wind plants permission. He says that's one of the tough choices Labour's willing to make in order to get the growth and prosperity, it says, a part of its project. The Conservatives have a bit more emphasis on kind of local democracy. These are bigger issues often in conservative, more rural conservative constituencies. They talk about democratic consent for projects and talk about how they changed the rules to protect agricultural land. The Lib Dems, somewhere in the middle on this, they say they'll lift unnecessary restrictions imposed by the Tories, but at the same time they promise local people will be heard. Greens, the Plaid Cymru and the SNP take a similar view. Reform, it's much less of an issue for them because they're saying they're going to scrap net zero and get rid of all renewable subsidies.
OK, so the postbag, you're getting a lot of questions in on climate issues. Amy from Norfolk has written to ask why there doesn't seem to be much focus on climate issues during this election. Is she right?
I mean, all the parties do have climate policies, but I think she's right that there hasn't been a huge amount of discussion about those climate policies in the debate. There was a huge rally in London this weekend. Tens of thousands of people turned out for the Restore Nature rally. It was supported by the UK's big nature and wildlife charities. Chris Packham was there, Emma Thompson, the actor, was there. And as you say, lots of people writing in on this. So I've got another one here. Why isn't global warming, the climate crisis and the loss of biodiversity not made more central to debates at every stage of the election, says Emily from Hampshire. She's 64. And I think the worry is people say, look, climate affects everything. You know, in the way we tackle climate change in the coming years will determine the future climate for hundreds of years, and they say that makes it much more important than other issues. But of course, other people say, look, we've got to tackle really key issues like housing, transport, health, all those other things. So really tricky for politicians and for broadcasters, for journalists like that, to get the balance right on these things.
You've done your job this morning. Justin, thank you very much indeed for taking those questions, because I guess it's quite frustrating for all of you as specialist journalists wanting to get your subject on, isn't it? And raise and get into the politics.
Yeah, I'm forever pushing and phoning the editors of the programmes, telling them, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And they've got to balance all of us, pushing against their, knocking on their doors, trying to get on.
Has been a really interesting, very different election campaign, hasn't it? Justin Rowlatt, thank you very much indeed for joining us.